All right, I'm excited about having you join me for this episode, and I've got a really special guest, Shiv Kumar. He hails all the way from New Zealand, a Kiwi or adopted Kiwi, maybe. He is originally from Chennai, India, which is in southern India. He helps mid level working professionals overcome mid career blues and rock the second half of their careers. He also helps them work through some of the corporate bullshit that they have to deal with between their people that report to them and those that they have to report to as well. So Shiv is exciting about having you join me, and as we discuss the topic of coaching across cultures, I would like for you to first to tell us a little bit about your cross-cultural experience as you moved from your homeland in India to New Zealand, and what was that like?
Hey, Miles, absolute pleasure and privilege to be here on your show. Thanks for inviting me. So, yeah, talking about my background, I graduated as an engineer from India way back in the 80s. The ancient in that sense, old vintage, but vintage cars are good, aren't they?
Oh, they're wonderful, man.
Yeah, so after that, I worked, in engineering for a short while, and then I switched over to sales and marketing. And I was in India till the late 90s, 97, 98.
Hmm.
And I had reached kind of middle management stage, and I wasn't sure which way I was going. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I happened to walk into an immigration seminar conducted by the New Zealand Immigration Agency.
Hmm.
Went in with no expectations, no plans, and then came out saying, I want to apply.
Wow.
Right. So back then, Miles, there was no internet, there was no Google, there was no YouTube. So I couldn't do any research about
Hmm.
New Zealand as a country. And quite frankly, I knew hardly anything about New Zealand, um, other than the fact that they played cricket, which is my favorite sport.
Okay.
Um, I didn't know anything else. Frankly, when I think about it, now in hindsight, I don't even know how I made that jump,
Yeah.
because I've always considered myself. Back then, I used to always say I'm a very risk averse sort of person. And then I think about this move and I think, wow, that was one hell of a leap out of my comfort zone,
Wow.
right?
Yes.
Coming to a country that I knew nothing about.
Hmm.
And it was one hell of a shock when I got here in 98,
Okay.
more than I ever imagined, right? First, there was all that excitement,
Yeah.
new country, everything looks different. And it's like, wow, I'm in heaven. And that took a little while to subside.
Hmm.
It took me a few months as I started applying for jobs and found that, nobody wanted to even meet me for an interview.
Wow.
And I was like, what's going on? Because New Zealand immigration, they did a very thorough job on my qualifications, my experience. They gave me points for each one of those and said, hey, this is the qualifying points that you need to get to, arrive at a permanent residence visa, and you're way above that. So, congratulations. We're happy to give you a visa. So I thought, well, if they're doing that, then there must be, a good
Hmm.
demand for my kind of person. Otherwise, why else would they give me a visa?
Mm-hmm.
Having done the process of, going through my qualifications, experience, and, a whole lot of English tests and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come here thinking, yeah, maybe the employers will be lining up as soon as I get off the plane. and, and how wrong was I?
Oh my.
It
Oh
was
my.
crazy,
Yeah.
just apply, apply, apply. And yeah, you get some very polite replies,
Yeah.
but no one even wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
So then I found myself in that catch 22 situation,
Mm.
um, that I can't get a job without local experience, but I can't get experience without a job,
Yeah.
right? So I just found myself in that trap. And it took a long time for me to break through with my first ever interview.
Mm-hmm.
So it was tough. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize these days. I guess people can, check out things on Google and YouTube and so on, but you often arrive unprepared.
Oh yeah.
Much as you think that you've done all the preparation,
Hmm.
it's never really enough.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I can relate to all of that. My experience, there's some similarities. You said it was about 89. It was 90. I mean 98. It was
Yep.
97 when I moved to Thailand. I was 27 years old, with a family, professional background. I was working with a nonprofit organization, so there was some help and assistance as far as setting up. But like you, no no Google, no internet to do a lot of research. Lonely Planet guides. That's where you go read a few books. Maybe up there, there was a book out there called Maipenrai, which is the Thai word for never mind. It gives you some ideas
Okay.
into the Thai mindset and some things like that to help prepare. But it, like you said, it doesn't prepare you. And even today, I mean, the world is so much smaller with technology. I mean, look
Hmm.
what we're doing right now. We're 17 hours apart and we're
Yeah.
having a face to face conversation. Uh, and you had the advantage of having English and going to an English speaking country. How
Hmm.
that is something I didn't have. I didn't know Thai or anything of that nature. So
Mm.
even making that adjustment and learning the language and getting to that point too is another hurdle as well.
Mm.
And so many of those things that you talk about, I can relate to. And I think from both of our experiences, we can definitely add a lot of value as we discuss this topic of coaching across different cultures. And so, from your experience with working cross, because really and truly you were working cross culturally and all that became a permanent residence for you, what have you learned from that experience that you apply today to help other people, either in similar situations or even people in mid-level careers that are trying to improve their lives and take their career to another level? How does that translate and help when working with others, especially people from other cultures? I'm Miles 3, and I help leaders who've been experiencing winning moments in the past, but right now you realize you need a new game plan and you want to dominate in your industry and life.
Yeah. Well, I guess when you go through a long phase where
Mm,
you're constantly fighting adversity,
mm-hmm.
um, you do start getting better in terms of your resilience.
Yeah.
Because you face so many rejections
Oh, wow.
that you kind of get used to it,
Okay.
right? Initially, when you face rejections, it cuts deep.
Mm,
It's like your self-esteem drops, your self-worth, goes down. You kind of start hating yourself, thinking, you know, am I just not good enough
mm,
for this environment?
yeah.
You know, then you think, well, what about all the things I've achieved in the past?
Mm-hmm.
How did I manage that if I'm that useless?
Mm-hmm.
So then comes a point where it's almost just getting used to it. I think I remember somebody saying, maybe it was a movie or something, but somebody said, hey, you know don't worry about all the rejection you're getting. It's only a phase.
Mm-hmm.
And then while the other person is thinking, okay, so it's a phase, and then I'll start getting acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this fellow who's advising the other person says, don't worry about it, it's only a phase, you'll get used to it. So it's almost like you just need to get used to certain things.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to a stage where I got used to, every time I applied for a job, I was expecting a rejection. Rather than expecting a call for an interview, I
Oh,
was
wow.
expecting a rejection. So that kind of prepared me. And I now talk about, when I talk to people who are going through a similar situation, who might be feeling stuck, stagnant, failure upon failure upon failure, thinking like, how the hell do I even get out of this? I'm stuck
Mm,
in a quicksand, and I keep getting drawn into it.
Yeah.
Um, I keep saying, hey, I've got a 3P formula,
Okay.
right? There are 3Ps that you need if you're stuck in this kind of a situation. One is patience. So you've got to learn to ride things out
Mm-hmm.
rather than, panicking and thinking this is the end of it and, I'm never going to succeed and all that kind of thing. Have
Yeah.
patience.
Yeah.
The second is persistence. You have to be annoyingly persistent.
Mm.
Uh, like chasing up recruitment companies, chasing up people that you've applied to,
Mm-hmm.
um, even if you feel like they're going to hate me for it. I've
Yeah.
already applied, and they've sent a standard reply saying we'll get in touch with you,
Yeah.
and again I'm ringing, or all that kind of stuff. And then perseverance. So these are my 3Ps: patience, persistence, and perseverance, because perseverance is about being able to sustain your efforts over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point in having this real spurt in activity.
Mm.
Like, I'm doing so many things, I'm gonna keep doing, and then you suddenly reach a stage where you just drop everything,
Yeah.
and then you leave a big gap, and then you restart. You're pretty much starting from the starting block. So
Yeah.
I always tell people, find something to do in the meanwhile, so that you're not constantly focusing on your lack of success.
Yeah. Mm.
So that's what I tell people who are feeling stuck and who are feeling like they've hit a dead end.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's no point in you just continuing to feel bad for yourself.
Mm.
Uh, you're only going to make your situation worse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
No.
that's what I'd like to say to anyone who might be listening or watching and thinking, I've had this phase for so long. Uh, Nothing's working out. Everybody else, seem to be doing all right,
Mm.
but there must be something wrong with me.
Yeah.
The moment you start thinking that, you're pretty much a goner.
Hey, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. That's true. There's so much of that. This seems like is just mindset and making sure you have a strong mindset. And the reality is, when you're working cross culturally, uh, I find that it it's a constant battle of working with your mindset. And speaking from a Western cultural point of view, and you're working in an Asian context, you put
Hmm.
the first thing you pointed out was patience. And especially people from, I would say, from your side of the world, from South
Hmm.
Asia, Southeast Asia,
Hmm.
and a lot of other Asian cultures as well. um, they are so much more patient, uh, naturally, it seems like. Now, they
Hmm.
get frustrated. I know they do. Okay.
Hmm.
But uh, especially when they come to a Western context, they can almost be too patient.
Right.
Because you point out the other one, that you got to be persistent. So
Yes.
you
Yes.
got to have two. For the Westerner going the other way,
Yeah.
you got to focus more on the patient part than the persistent part,
Correct.
because our cultural background teaches us to be more straightforward, a lot more, I would not necessarily driven in a different way. That's the best way I could say it. And
Hmm.
because we're going to be a little bit more aggressive. That's what I would call it. We're going to be a little bit more aggressive. And at times when we're working across a different culture, that aggression is a turnoff.
Yes.
But at the same time, when you bring it back the other way, that patience, extra patience that you see from Asian cultures,
Mm.
is communicates it is a turn off to the Westerners
Correct.
and as well. And I I find, especially because right now, I work with a multinational company. It's just a Japanese company, and I previously worked at a Korean company,
Hmm.
and I have all that experience working in Thailand. So, that's my Southeast.
Mm-hmm.
East Asia experience, let's just say, and I can see that from both sides. So I can sit in the room and I can understand it from the Asians, the Asian side of the room, but at the same time, I see what the Americans are getting frustrated with as well, and trying to help the other, help the other two kind of come a little bit more together. And that is something I see so much of is they don't. And when we're working cross culturally, and let's just say, and we're in a Western setting because you're in a Western setting in New
Mm-hmm.
Zealand, but if
Mm-hmm.
you've got other people from a diverse background like yours in that setting, what is your advice or to either the Western culture side or the Asian culture? How can we come together more to be more effective? How would you coach them through that?
Right. You hit the nail on the head that certain things may be seen as a strength in one culture,
Hmm.
but the same thing can be viewed as a weakness in another culture.
Yeah.
Patience, for example, if you're too patient, the Western culture sees it as lack of initiative.
Mm.
You just apply and forget about it. I mean, that's not how we want people. We want people to show initiative,
Yeah.
right? But back in our countries, you do that, you're seen as annoying.
Mm.
So, so it's a tough bridge, but at the same time, I feel it's how we say you need to read the room,
Yep.
right? And I think that's what happens when you're in a new setting. You've got to read the room. You've got to try and understand what is different here in comparison to what you have learned back home.
Hmm.
A lot of things, like even something very simple, like if you take the example of, I don't know how Indian work situation is now. I mean, I left India nearly 25 years ago. So I must admit that when I do go back to India, it's more for a holiday or meeting family and so on.
Yeah.
So I'm never really in a business setting in India. But when I was there, things were quite formal.
Hmm.
When you're in a work setting, there's a very fixed hierarchy,
Hmm.
and you're expected to follow that hierarchy.
Yep.
You don't just walk into a manager's room without checking first if he or she has got the time for you.
Yeah.
Similarly, you don't go and socialize with your boss's boss.
Yeah.
Here it was very different. When I came here, everything is so informal.
Mm.
You can be just a normal engineer, or you can be even a factory worker, or a warehouse store person, or whatever, but you can call the CEO by the first name,
Yeah.
right? You'd never do that back in India.
Yeah.
So for me it was quite a learning experience, and unfortunately for me, I had to learn as I went.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody here. Back then, I don't even know if people knew that there was coaching for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, so for me, it was like, okay, I just had to learn on the job, right? When I did manage to finally get a job, it was straight away I was thrown in the deep end, because
Hmm.
that's another thing you see in India. What happens is when you take on a new person, and you know that the new person doesn't have experience in that field, or in that in that environment, then you put them through a very formal training process,
Okay.
right? Nothing like that here.
Uh-huh.
Okay, they sign you on, they've started paying you a salary, so you better get to work.
Oh, yeah.
So, and for me, what was really difficult is, of course, English wasn't an issue, but the accent was a problem. you know
Yeah.
I mean, Miles, it was okay for me with American, or a generic American accent,
Yes.
or a generic British accent, because I've watched movies and TV
Hmm.
programs and so on, so I was familiar.
Yeah.
I'd never really heard the New Zealand English accent,
Yeah.
and I was like, what sort of language are they speaking?
Okay. Yeah, I know what you
Oh, it was crazy. And to top it all, my first job
Yeah.
happened to be in phone sales.
Oh, wow.
which makes it much worse. When you're face
Yep.
to face, it's a lot easier to understand
Hmm.
each other. But on the phone,
Yep.
and like when I say thrown in the deep end, I mean it quite literally, because you don't understand, the what shall you say, the jargon
Yeah.
that is in that particular industry, right? There's so many things that they might use, acronyms,
Hmm.
abbreviations, some other words, and then suddenly I'm on the phone, and then you got these people who are on the phone who don't want to spend their time with the trainee,
Yep.
right? They, as it is, they're busy doing their thing, and they take time off to speak on the phone, and then you trying to say, "Excuse me, could you please repeat what you said?"
Yeah.
um, they're not happy. So I got into quite a few, tricky situations where people would just say, "Can you get me somebody who can understand my accent?" you know, and I had to say, "Sorry, what did you say?" So I think, nowadays, I think it's a little bit easier that you could probably research Kiwi accent, you could listen
Mhm.
to it on YouTube and all that sort of stuff. But having said that, a lot of people feel that, oh, it's only English, right?
No,
I
it's
can
not.
speak English. It's fine.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of homework. I think I would suggest to people that they do the homework. And I would also suggest, if they can, reach out and, find some support,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether
And
it's, maybe some Facebook groups, maybe
mhm.
some meetup groups, whatever.
Mhm.
Try and find some groups where you can mix with local people.
Yeah.
And one of the things I would always, recommend to people who are new to another culture is, don't seek out your own people all the time,
Yeah.
because then you are not going to learn enough.
Mm-mm.
So, and people tend to do that because obviously you want to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You've come to a foreign country and you're feeling all alone, you're feeling homesick, and so on, and you tend to gravitate towards some
Mhm.
organizations that are only made up of people from your home country.
Mm.
That doesn't help you understand local accents,
No.
you know.
No,
So
not at
that's
all.
what I would say. And another thing I would say, Miles, is that people who are attempting these sorts of things,
Mhm.
they need to get more comfortable with stepping out of their comfort zone,
Okay.
because you've already made that step.
Yeah.
You've already moved out of your comfort zone. Now, if you try to again get back to your own little comfort zone in the new environment, as in, going and joining an association of your country or your
Mhm.
people and all that, it doesn't serve your purpose.
Yeah.
So that's when I would say you've already made a big move out of your comfort zone by moving countries.
Yes.
Keep that door open in terms of, learning more through a little bit of discomfort, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So I can relate to all that. It's my experience has been the same as in, especially let's just say working on this side of the world in the Western context, and you're working with Asian multinational organizations, and that's the first thing I try to help the Western Americans in the room to understand. You don't know who they learned English from.
mm,
They could have learned English from somebody from their native country themselves and didn't have an opportunity to have it, to learn English from a speaker, native speaker of the language. Then it could go down. Looks like you said. You said maybe a British English that you learned, spent most of your time in, and then
yes.
you went to New Zealand. Well, that could happen. That person in anywhere in South Asia, Southeast Asia, they could have an English teacher that was from England, they could have them from Australia, New Zealand,
Yes.
they could have them from America, they could have them from the Philippines. They
Yeah.
don't realize that either. They don't get
Yeah.
that. Sometimes you could probably go to certain parts of Southeast Asia and actually have an Indian teaching English because your English is stronger than native speakers there, and they would be
Right.
glad to hire them to do that. There again, you don't realize that, and that makes their that just makes they learn English from you, and then they have to hear me speak it with
Yeah,
my slang and dialect, and how I speak English, and they're going to be
yeah.
confused the whole time. And people don't take that into consideration and realize that when you're trying to work with, coach other people that are working cross culturally, that just the language barrier alone, even if they studied English throughout their full school system. I
Mm,
mean, a good example is you can look at the American school system and say, well, there's so many kids that go through high school and go into college and take Spanish, and yet they can't speak a word of it. I was the same way. And that's just because they never taught us how to speak it.
right.
And that happens a lot of time. I know my wife, being Thai, she understands a lot of English, and her English has gotten stronger and better.
Mm,
And she graduated with a degree in English, but she never had a native English speaker teach her English in her whole time going through school in Thailand and with her education. And so, like you said, you got to take that into consideration. And it is so important. I agree with you too that you have to step out of your comfort zone. And anytime we're working with someone, especially coaching them cross culturally across different cultures, it has to happen both ways. And this, I see it, and you've pointed out, and I see it all the time. Saw it at the Korean company. The Koreans always spent all the time together.
mm,
I was one of the few that reached out and said, "Hey, would you go play golf? Would you want to do this? Would do other things with them to try to get them to know them at a real level?" Because I knew if I did those little things, that when I wanted to get certain things done, I had taken the time to develop the relationship. And I think we both realize that as well, especially from the American, I would say the Western side. And
mm,
I'll speak directly to Americans right here. You need to take more time as an American with them doing other stuff, even if it means you go out and you eat their food,
mm,
drink their beer, drink their whatever it might be, or whatever they like to do, and do that on a regular basis with them. That too will help in those relationships, and it helps you get things done. Things that you couldn't get done before, you'll be able to get done because you took the time. And we don't, that's one thing too that people don't realize, is that value of relationship is so much. It's almost, it's, to me, I think it's higher in an Asian context than it is in a Western context. I mean, we do, we'll go out and have a drink or something like that, but it doesn't seem like you have to invest just as much time as you would in those types of
mm.
contexts as well.
Yeah, I agree, Miles, because end of the day, people do business with people.
Mm,
Okay. And if we get into this mindset of us versus them,
yeah.
um, it's never going to work.
Mm,
So if I was coaching someone who's finding themselves in this cross-cultural situation, I would say get rid of this us versus them mindset.
mm,
Okay, you guys are people. You might have come from a different geographic location in the world, but end of the day, people are people.
mm,
Emotions are all common.
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter which part of the world you come from, sadness, happiness, anger, frustration, these are all common. So find those common things,
Mm,
that are kind of separating you.
mm-hmm,
And that's where, you mentioned that, you were in the room with, the Westerners on one side, the Asians on the other, and you're finding that, they're kind of just operating in their own silos.
mm-hmm, yeah.
That's because they're thinking, oh, this is how we do things,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, I don't know why they do like that. We do like this.
Mm,
Doesn't matter how you did things or how you were doing things. Right now, you're working together.
mm-hmm,
So just think about us.
mm-hmm.
And I would also say, sometimes it really helps if you don't take yourself too seriously.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes people have this ego,
Mm-hmm.
like, why the hell can't this guy understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, I would say, till you get really comfortable with each other,
Yeah.
especially in that initial phase, if you're struggling, pack your ego and, put it somewhere where you don't see it for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that helps, when people realize that, okay, this guy is not too full of himself. He's willing to understand what we are trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he can't understand it, he's not losing his rag.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. I mean, I had to inculcate this
Mm,
when I found myself suddenly, on the phones.
mm,
And I had so many angry people. There were so
yeah.
many things that they were pissed off about. And it's like, okay, he really shouldn't be shouting at me like this, but I'm going to just swallow this for now.
Uh-huh.
And I'll try and use humor. That really works.
Uh-huh.
If you can try and, just to give you a quick example, have we got time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So one of the early calls that I took
Mm-hmm.
in my, first job was some guy who was like a one-man show,
Okay.
and I didn't know because it was on the phone, right?
Yeah.
So he was the only one who would order anything from his company. The others were just workers who were working on machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he would never give an order number because nobody else would order,
Yeah.
from that company, right? But
Yeah.
I was told by my manager as a standard procedure, when someone places an order, you say, "Can I have your order number?"
Yeah.
Right? So this guy rang up. I was new. I didn't know all these things about this particular company. And he rattled off a few things. And then I said, okay, so can I have your order number? And the guy got, basically angry because I asked him for an order number. And
Okay.
he said, you can just put onion bhaji for all I care. Now, he obviously got from my accent that I was Indian,
Yeah.
right? So you can put onion bhaji for all I care. And then he slammed the phone down.
Oh.
So I thought, okay. So I don't know what set him off, maybe my accent, whatever. So I actually, when I did his order, I put onion bhaji as order number in the field.
Okay.
So when he got the invoice, he rang back and he said, I want to speak to that Indian guy. And they put him through to me and he said, hey, I'm so and so. And I said, hey, yeah, hi. And he was like, you actually put onion bhaji on my invoice. And I was like, well, you're the customer.
Uh-huh.
So, customer's king. So, yeah, do you want to place an order today? What would you like? Matar paneer? And he laughed just like this. You
Okay.
know, he laughed and he said, ah, ha, ha, ha. So you got a sense of humor.
Mm.
I said, well, you need that in life.
Yeah.
And after that, every time he would ring our, free call number, he would ask for me by name.
Oh, wow.
So, if I had, reacted angrily or
Mm-hmm.
grumpily or gone and complained to my manager or something,
Yeah.
that would have been the end of the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I just took it on the chin. Well, he must be in a bad mood. Maybe, he
Yeah.
didn't like the sound of my voice, whatever.
Yeah.
But the fact that I took it as a joke, it just built that bridge. And it's all about building that bridge, right?
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah.
And both parties have to be willing to do that. Sometimes one party is not.
Yeah. And that's difficult.
But Miles, you still have to think about where you stand,
Mm.
right? You don't control the other person. You
Yeah.
can't say the other person should react in such a way.
Mm.
You can do what you can. And more often than not, if the other person sees that you're trying, they'll come down off their high horse.
Yeah.
No human being likes to be a prick, you know?
There might be a few of them that like to be
Yeah, of
that.
course,
They
of
seem
course.
like
But
it sometimes.
yes, and I've worked with a few of them.
Oh, me too. You could probably tell a bunch of stories about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you should do whatever is within your power,
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. True.
Rather than think about, well, I said this and why didn't that fellow respond like that?
Yeah.
Or why did she respond like that?
True. So true.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, that's some really value added stuff, especially when you talk about the ego stuff. Uh, that's something that I work with and deal with a lot, and actually been working on some training and some actually writing a book related to that about how you work with people from different cultures and
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
coaching across different cultures. And that ego is one of the biggest things I talk about, because the ego is just as big on one side of the water as is the other. It's
Yeah.
just, it's just, it's just, but it's a little bit different in how it's dealt
Mm,
with, and kind of diving into that some and helping people understand that, um, for me, it's being a little, a, when you're, for the, I'll use the Asian example, for the Asians that are coming and working in the US and they represent their mother country and that big organization. uh, they have a lot riding on them.
mm.
And really, you've talked about the hierarchical thing, and that's still
Yes.
so prevalent. It doesn't really go away right now, and even with
Mm,
the generational changes, the stuff that even Asian cultures are dealing with. And you got to realize that everything that they relate to within their self has to do with that title. And
yeah.
them
Yeah.
being successful is a huge reflection on them and their family and everything that they're about. And you, as a as an American, I'm going to say, as a Westerner or American, you got to keep that in mind when working with them. And
Yeah.
I know that you, as an American, you've worked hard to get where you're at, and you've got a lot riding on your career as well. And there's just a different way. It's so much part of, especially in an Asian context, it's so much part of their identity, that you need to take that into consideration.
Absolutely.
Uh,
You remind me of one of my bosses,
mm,
that I worked with in India. Now, I won't use his real name, I'll use my name instead.
hmm.
But every time he answered the phone, he would say, Shiv Kumar, branch manager.
Yep.
So, so you're right. The title is part of their identity. So, and I used to find it amusing even when I was back in India. Like, why does he have to say his title every time he answers the phone?
Mm,
Most of the time, people who are ringing his number know who they're going to talk to. But even so, he'll pick up and say, Shiv Kumar, branch manager.
mm,
So it was so closely associated with his identity.
hmm.
So if you, for instance, if you're a Westerner who's gone there to work in India and you happen to be working with this person, you need to recognize
Yeah.
that okay, for this person that job title is very, very important.
Mm,
May not be for me. To me it might just think, oh, a manager is a manager, what damn difference does it make?
yeah.
But to that person it is important.
Yeah.
And if you can just acknowledge that, even if it feels awkward to you,
Hmm.
it's like, why is he being so silly about a title?
Yeah.
It's okay. That's just how he's feeling. Let him
Mm,
feel. And these are the sorts of things that people have to take into account. So I'm saying, even if you feel awkward doing something, do it for a while. You don't have to do it all the time, because sometimes people say, but I like to be authentic,
yeah.
all that sort of stuff. And I believe in authenticity. Don't get me wrong. I do
Yeah.
believe in it. But sometimes, just for a brief while, if you can just say, okay, even if I don't like something, I'm going to do it for a while.
Hmm.
We do it all the time, don't we, Miles? I mean,
Yeah.
yes, we like to be authentic, but does it mean that 24/7 we're always doing things we like?
No.
Yeah. So, like, and it was interesting you mentioned about this power dynamic and, all that sort of stuff. In any relationship, there is a power dynamic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I want to mention, I don't know if I told you this, but I've been doing some business English coaching for Korean executives,
Okay.
right? So they're based in Korea, and
Hmm.
through a school in Korea, I'm doing some business English coaching for these Korean executives. And one of them was telling me the other day that he feels a sense of fear when he speaks English,
Oh, okay.
right? And he has to speak English to a lot of companies that he deals with who are not in Korea.
Hmm.
So I asked him, where's this fear coming from? He said, oh, because I feel that I might say something wrong. I might say. And then he interestingly told me something else. He said, I said, when do you feel this fear the most? Give me some examples of situations where you feel this fear. And he
Mm-hmm.
said that most of the time he feels the fear when he's a supplier and trying to talk to a prospective client or an
Mm-hmm.
existing client. So you
Okay.
see the dynamic here that, he is actually a supplier
Mm-hmm.
and he's talking to a client or a prospective client. That's when he
Yeah.
feels the fear. I said, and when do you not feel the fear? Do you ever not feel the fear? He said, yeah, sometimes. I said, tell me when you don't feel the fear. And he said, if I'm visiting an English speaking country and I go into a restaurant or a fast food joint or something, I'm the customer,
Mm-hmm.
they're serving me,
Yeah.
so then I don't feel the fear.
Huh.
So that's the thing. You see, sometimes we get caught up in this, that person is more powerful in
Yeah.
this relationship, and therefore I'm getting nervous.
Yeah.
And we need to try and understand that. If we understand the power dynamic, then I think things get a bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. Well, that's good. Man, I really appreciate all the value that you've brought. This has been fun. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, I've
Hopefully,
enjoyed this too. It's been great talking about my previous experiences and so on. It's like, nostalgia.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, so much of it is transferable as well, and it just helps not only us but others out there who are working cross culturally. Either in either one of our settings, or maybe, I have people that follow me in Thailand. You would probably have people that follow you in India, and they're
Mm,
probably in some similar situations as well, and trying to figure out, how can I be more effective working with that person that's a lot different than me and things.
yeah.
So I
I mean,
appreciate
I
you.
feel sometimes if I had someone I could lean on back
Mhm.
then, um, I mean, it would have made life so much easier for me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody who's been through a similar thing or similar journey or who understands that journey well,
Yeah.
it would have made a huge difference to me back then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. So how could people get a hold of you, follow you? What are some of the different channels that you have as far as your content that's out there for people?
Oh, I mean, I think the best place to reach me would be either through my website or a direct email to me. So
Mhm.
the website is thinklifecoaching.co.nz,
Mhm.
and it leads through to my social media platforms and so on.
Okay.
And they can contact me through the website by sending me a quick message too.
Okay.
Or if they want to write a little bit, and if they're more comfortable just writing a few lines and sharing what they're going through, then they can email me, which
Mm.
is shiv
Mhm.
at thinklifecoaching.co.nz.
Okay. All right. So we'll drop that in the description below for others as well if they want to reach out to you and learn more about you. I really appreciate you joining me today, and it was a lot of fun, man. Hopefully we can do it again.
Hey, thank you for the invite. It was an absolute pleasure doing this with you, and yes, I'd love to have a sequel to this.
Okay. Sounds good.
All
Hey, I'm Miles Street, and thanks so much for joining Shiv and I today. We had a great time sharing with you some of our experiences working cross culturally, and hope you realize that there are a lot of elements that you deal with when you work in a cross cultural environment, and especially as you try to coach people from different cultures as well. And some of those things related to the language barriers, to dealing with the ego, going through the various different transitions, loss of identity, rediscovering yourself, and discovering where you fit in host culture as far as your leadership is concerned. I also have some other videos here on cross-cultural leadership. It's called the Cross-Cultural Chameleon Business Leader. I think that'd be a great benefit to you. Plus, check out some videos here I'm offering to you about success and personal development. Thank you for joining us today, and look forward to catching you next time.